and welcome to a new knitting episode from me. It's been a long time coming, and I'm not going to bore you with all the details about why. Maybe a little life update toward the end. But, spring has arrived, and the garden has been beckoning, and I've also been reading quite a bit, so I've just not had time for everything. And of course, there's also my day job, if you will, some of which is actually a night job or an evening job because I'm a yoga teacher. So I'm in need of a few extra hours these days, but I'm sure that many of us often feel that way. Anyway, welcome to this little space here. My name is Helle, and I'm coming to you from Denmark, the southern part of Denmark. And oh, by the way, sometimes somebody refers to me if it's a knit along or if it's something I've said, and people try to say Helle the way we say it in Danish, and you don't have to. I lived in the States when I was a teenager, and everybody called me Hella. So I'm fine with that. Also, though, if you do want to pronounce it, just think of the English way or Irish way of saying Helen, which is with a light L. Helen, 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 and just leave out the N. Anyway, getting lost in the details already. I've only just started. Um, but welcome to this little episode. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm very grateful that you decided to spend a little of your time with me. This is kind of an update, I guess. It's about my spring knitting projects right now. And full disclosure, there are no finished objects in this episode, but there is what I might call a minor WIP parade. For me, it's a WIP parade, considering that I used to be pretty much a monogamous knitter, but those days are clearly over. So I just wanted to take you along with me and share where I'm at right now in terms of my knitting. I have about three, you might say four, works in progress. So I'll just be walking us through those, sharing some of the details. In Denmark, it's spring now, it's April, and I'm so appreciative of that. I know that for some of you in the Southern Hemisphere, it's autumn now, but there's something about those transitional seasons that's always, for me anyway, exciting. There's something new going on, and I really appreciate April right now. It's been a wonderful April so far in Denmark. Hallelujah. And apropos spring and April, I'd also like to share a quote, which I usually do, and this time it's inspired by spring and other things. The quote is by Pablo Neruda, a poet from Chile in South America. And he said, "You can cut all the flowers, but you cannot keep spring from coming." It probably needs no explanation, but I might add that for me, it's a little glimmer of hope, hope hidden in the cycle of nature, in the cycle of everything. After every winter comes spring, even if you cut all the flowers. Hold that thought. There's a cat meowing who wants to get out. Before I get into talking about my works in progress, let me just mention what I'm wearing. It's the cardigan number 6 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, which I knitted almost 3 years ago now, using the recommended yarn, which I did quite often back then. It's knitted using 3 strands of the silk mohair from Især, and somebody actually asked me how to pronounce Især, so that would be Især. No Især. We don't have that R in Danish. So Især, 3 strands of Især silk mohair in the color, I think, 0S. It's the color that's white but has this sort of very pale pink hue. Um, I've worn it often. It's pretty warm, even though it's lace, but that's because it's 3 strands of silk mohair. So I didn't realize that at the time when I knitted it. I'd still just restarted my knitting career back then a few months previously. So, but yeah, it was a really nice pattern, clear, and you have the same repeat all over, so there was no problem. And for me, Isa is still definitely one of the softest silk mohairs. So let me mention my first work in progress. It's the Foxthoughts Pullover by Hiroko Payne, The Hare and the Crow, and this is as far as I've gotten. It looks very weird because I haven't blocked it yet. Of course, because I've finished the body and I'm about to begin the sleeves. And you may say, how come you haven't gotten any further? Because I've gotten distracted, both by other works in progress, also because I had to fudge a little here. So I'm going to have to set aside some bit of brain power and a few hours to sort of begin the sleeves. And that's not because I'm not enjoying it. I definitely still am enjoying it, but it also has taken quite a long time for me. I haven't knit this very fast because I sit sort of and stretch the floats in order not to cinch the fabric. But yeah, this is as far as I've gotten. So let me get into the basics in case you haven't heard or in case you've forgotten. The yarn is by La Bien-Aimée. It's a kit that I bought 2 years ago. Here you can see some of the yarns, and what you might also be able to tell here, which I've already thought quite a bit about, is that there's going to be quite a few of these skeins left over by the time I'm finished. So I've already been pondering, what could I knit with those? Because as you can tell here, the color work on the yoke ends kind of far down, and that's because I didn't meet gauge at all. Usually my yoke will be up here, and I've complained about that. So this time for sure I've gotten depth in the color work on the yoke. So that means I'm going to be finished with the color work on the sleeves, also kind of far down, maybe here, which means that it may look a little too much if I add the color work that's supposed to be added on the cuffs. um, I'm not sure yet. I really like it. Those I've seen, it looks like a little bracelet, but their colorwork yoke ends up further up. Um, I've seen a few people leave out the colorwork on the cuffs, so it definitely looks nice. I just haven't quite decided, but I think it's just going to maybe be too much because my colorwork takes up so much room, and you can see there's very little of the main color down here. Um, so I'm going to have quite a bit left over, but I might probably not do anything with that yarn for quite a while because I will have then sort of um, been satiated maybe with this color story. However, I do really love this color story. Holy moly, I love it. I think it's beautiful for somebody who is totally into neutrals. Um, well, I'm into neons as well, especially since this is a fade. I want to show you that the color work is really neat. And this is unblocked. There's something about the helix and felix, which are the two yarns used here. So it's a mixture of helix and felix from La Bien-Aimée and the, hold on, it's a light fingering that I hold double, and I think the stitch gauge is about 27 to 29, depending on which needle I'm using. And helix is the main color here. That's undergrowth, and that's 75% Falkland Merino, 25% Gotland wool, whereas the Felix, which is this one for sea glass, love that color, is 75% Falkland Merino as well, but 25% Corriedale. I'm not super familiar with these yarns. I know merino is supposed to be soft. This is not especially soft, which is why I cast on the collar using the needle for the body so that it wouldn't be too tight. And this is something I want to say, if you're planning on knitting this, um, it comes with two versions of a collar. It comes with the high collar, which looks like this, but mine is a little wider because I use that bigger needle. And then it comes with, you could say, slightly more open collar. The problem with that is that it doesn't begin here, it begins down there. So it doesn't have these initial little arrow-like things, and I really like them. They look a little bit sort of like, yeah, arrows or jewels or something. Um, so I decided to to knit the high collar, even though I would have preferred a lower collar, but I wanted that bit of the pattern because it's like a nice intro with the background still here. I think the helix and the felix are really good yarns for color work. I mean, it's like they create this evenness even when you don't try. um I don't know if you can see that it's very even, but it's pretty even. And while I remember, if any of you have knitted this or in this kind of yarn, have you blocked it in the usual way where you wash it or soak it? Because I'm thinking about just steam blocking it, because wouldn't it be tragic if some of these colors bled into if the main color bled into the some of the the brighter colors. I doubt they will, because I think La Bien-Aimée is a really good quality hand-dyed yarn, but just to be sure. So I'm contemplating that. For needle, I used I'm using a 4 millimeter, which is, I forget if it's what they recommend in the pattern or if it's 3.75. And I think 4 millimeters a US 7. And I probably should have gone down, which is why I have such a low yoke. But that's because I was afraid it would sort of bunch up the fabric a whole lot, because I'm a tight knitter. So I thought if I go down, it's going to be really dense. I think this is already quite dense. So I just couldn't even imagine sizing down. Yeah, so I've pretty much got sleeve island ahead. So I think that's also why I've been a little sort of putting it aside for a while. Yeah, I want to say for some reason it was tricky for me to read the chart sometimes, because the background is, of course, the main color is white, and then the contrast color is black. And there were many times when it was completely the reverse here. Um, for instance, here you can see that here the main color is the dark one and the contrast color is the light one. And it was often the case where I had to sort of wrap my head around it if I'd left it. And then I came back to it, I'm like, right, the main color is actually black or dark and the contrast color is light. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was sort of counterintuitive compared to what the pattern looks like or the chart looks like. One thing that I did wonder about, and I went on Ravelry to sort of zoom in on people's pictures, is that the beginning of round is mid front, which means I have this sort of little not so charming indentation where the yarn is, and that's very unusual for me. It's, at least I've found that it's usually in the back, so you can kind of hide it. And I wasn't quite sure if I could avoid that, because there are some short rows in the back here to raise the back just a little bit. So probably no big deal. I will be able to tack it down, and I've also been tempted to tack this down completely. Let's see. And also, I just want to say that you were supposed to divide for body and sleeves after the colorwork yoke, which for me is down here. So that obviously would have created some major bat wings, and I didn't want that, of course. So I kept trying it on and on and on from here down, and then I finally decided to split for sleeves at around here. I forget what row it was on, but similar to a few other people, I'll put it in my final notes on Ravelry. But I would just recommend that you try it on, like any top-down sweater. Try it on and see if you want to divide earlier or later, depending on how your yoke looks. And then since I didn't meet gauge, I had quite a few stitches on my needles by the time I tried it on here. It was sort of ballooning a little at the back. And also I wanted the pattern, of course, to fit under the sleeves, which it didn't the first few rounds. So let me see if I can show you. Yeah, I'm going to probably do a little bit of not seaming, but sewing a little bit to tighten it up. But you can see here, the first few rounds, the pattern didn't line up. So I made a few decreases to make sure that the pattern lined up, and it did, maybe about, yeah, down here. So that was all right. So a little bit of fudging because I didn't meet gauge, and that's all right. So now I need to finish this beautiful sweater. Of course, it's not going to be very springy, apart maybe from the colors, but it's going to be relatively warm, not super, super warm because it is a thin yarn, but the yarns are obviously layered a little, if you will. But I'm looking so much forward to finishing this and to knitting on it again for the sleeves. And oh, by the way, I also went quite a bit down when I went down here, which is unusual for me. And it's also unusual for me to have to go down a needle size in order to meet gauge. And that's why probably I didn't really trust it either. So frankly, I'm further down on the yoke here than I would have probably preferred, but I'm fine. I'm fine with that because I do think it's a beautiful. It's like a painting kind of. Um, so I first started knitting a few rounds here using the same needle, and then I could see that it flared a lot. So I ripped back and sized down. I don't think I've done that either. I usually knit tighter when it's just stockinette without color work. So same goes for the two other projects I'm working on, I really have found out the benefit of gauge swatching every time, because different yarns behave differently, certainly in my hands and on different needles. So that's definitely been worthwhile, even if I sometimes don't quite get it right. So that's as far as I've gotten with the Foxthoughts pullover. Still very much enjoying it, but it's been hibernating for a few weeks. And the reason why it's been hibernating is that I've, in the meantime, been working on a test knit, which lives in this very, I don't have fancy knitting bags or project bags. This is like a, what you might call it, a bag that came with bed linen. So very simple, very sort of a pale lilac, which is incidentally quite suitable for the project. I'm working on the Lyra blouse. This is a very simple unicolor, solid color project, and I'm at the same place. I have reached Sleeve Island. Only just this morning, or I bound off using an Italian bind off and twisted rib, only twisting the knit stitches. And this is a pattern by Karoline Skovgaard Benson, also known as Aegyo Knit. And it's, to me, very much a spring blouse. Lyra blouse. Also tell you something about its lightweight nature, and you can't see it here. It looks pretty good as a short sleeve t-shirt, but I'm gonna make the sleeves. They're 3/4 length and have a bit of drama at the end where um, they don't balloon out, but they sort of extend out. No, I don't know what they're called, but they're sort of like bell shaped. That kind of bell, not that kind of bell. So there's some increases, and then there's also a long ribbing with a twist. And Karoline has made hers in Rakuda and Sensai by Ito, and Sensai is the silk mohair. Rakuda is, I think it's could be merino, certainly a wool and camel blend. And a couple of us have received yarn support by Ito yarn, and I was given the option of using the Rakuda as well, or Kinu, which is a silk yarn. And since that would give me a lighter sweater, a cooler sweater, I chose that option because I run hot. And I've mentioned that before. I really appreciate having sweaters or blouses that I can use in sort of transitional weather, and also that I can wear indoors. So I quite appreciate that. So let me show you the yarn. So these are the two that I'm using right now. This is one of those cones. This is the silk, 100% silk in the color snow gray. And this is the silk mohair, the Sensai, in the color crocus. So the gray is given this lilac, this pale lilac hue, which I quite like. And for somebody who hasn't worn a lot of purple or lilac ever, I've really gravitated toward it since I made Aegyo sweater last year in this in a brighter purple. And it's also quite springy, obviously, hence the name crocus. You can see here it's got these details under the sleeves with this twisted rib, and the twisted rib also at the collar and then in the raglan. So very simple sweater, really lovely to knit on something super simple in between and after color work, where your mind doesn't have to sort of think about what color do I use now. There's just the raglans and then a little bit under the sleeves, and then it's just, cruising. Really enjoyed that. I've made it a little longer than hers. Hers is quite cropped. This is relatively cropped, but not a whole lot. I think I've increased the length by maybe 8 centimeters or so, 3 inches or something like that, at least. Again, all those details will be added to Ravelry by the time I've finished. Some of the other testers have used a blend of linen and silk from Gepard Garn with, I think, a strand of cashmere lace, also from Gepard Garn. And they also look really lovely. I'm using a needle size 4 millimeter or US 6, which was surprising to me. When I first started gauge watching, um, this little thing here, I automatically went up to a size 4.5 because I always size up when I knit Karoline's patterns. She's a loose knitter. I am very much not a loose knitter. But I didn't meet gauge. So maybe I thought that's because I'm using the silk instead of the kinu instead of the rakuda. So I tried using a 4 millimeter, and that came out. I met gauge, and then when I started knitting, by the time I was almost done with the raglan increases, I had moved from a size 1 to a size 2. I cast on for the size 1 and I made the increases for size 1, but then the width was a size 2. So clearly, the Kino and the Sensei behave a little differently once you have a bigger fabric, because I met gauge here, and she did also when she made a gauge swatch. So I made a few decreases under the arms, close to these rib stitches, and it became a little narrower, and it's actually turned out fine. It's not super large, but it's a relaxed fit, like a little boxy blousey fit, and I'm really looking forward to having this in my wardrobe. And so far I think this is an absolutely yummy yarn combination. I have to say, the silk doesn't look silky. It's kind of like the knitting for Olive. I think it's the same kind of silk, barrette silk. It's not shiny at all, and it's if I didn't know it was silk, I would probably have guessed that it's linen. But it's really lovely. And then this, oh my gosh, I'm sensing that this is going to be up there with the Isa silk mohair as a soft silk mohair. Really lovely. Let me show you the yarn in its non-used form. Here is the Kinu, and here's the Sensei. So Sensei is proving to be a really soft silk mohair and comes in a lot of delicious colors, I have to say. I was really drawn to this delicate, dusty lilac. And then when it was called crocus, I thought, perfect for a spring project. And I like the idea of coloring the gray with that purple, or muting the purple with the gray, you could also say. So the pattern will be out by the time you see this. Uh, and I think the English translation will be as well, because I'm doing that one. So I'll have to get on that. Just for reference, it's a 21 stitch gauge, so almost the same as the next project that I have, which looks distinctly different. So this is a very open fabric. Well, not open, but loose and light fabric. So I think it's going to be a perfect spring blouse, and something that I'm going to get quite a bit of wear out of. It has what she calls dramatic sleeves, and I'm looking forward to knitting them, and to having 3/4 length sleeves. I don't have many sweaters or blouses with 3/4 length sleeves. I've been wanting to try Ito's yarns for a long time, and I'm really grateful to be able to do it now. They're quite luxurious, I have to say. So I think that's that in terms of the Lyra blouse. The last work in progress that I'm working on right now is another colorwork sweater, and it's a little ridiculous that I cast this on, considering I haven't finished the Foxthoughts and I'm in the middle of a test. But I mentioned it in my plans when I talked about my potential plans for this year. The reason why I cast this on now, despite the fact that I'm actually working on another color work and I'm in the middle of a test knit, is that Andrea from Knit LA and Jackie from the Knitting a Good Yarn podcast had also talked about wanting to knit it. And it's the Obsidian by Tanya Barley, and we decided to knit it together, which is really lovely. So we actually we wrote a little back and forth, and then we had a little Zoom call. It was fun. I couldn't get mine to work, so I sat on this ancient iPad with a crack in the middle of the screen. So I was feeling a little pathetic there, but it was really good fun. And it was also pretty amazing to sit there and talk just, across the globe, and show each other the colors that we were thinking about using. So this is as far as I've gotten. I've actually already switched color once, which you cannot at all tell here. I don't know if you can see this. So the first few rows down to about here, I've used an off-white, and then I've changed to a light gray. We had that Zoom meeting on April 1st, and then I cast on the following day. Incidentally, hence Christian Andersen's birthday, April 2nd. He came from the city that I live in, so just that's why. Something that we all know. all the buses have flags on them that day, so it's very sort of something that everybody always goes, "Oh yeah, it's Hans Christian Andersen's birthday." Anyway, I believe Tanya Barley is from Ireland, and this is the first pattern I'm knitting by her, and it's such a good pattern. It's really clear, very sort of structured, and um, yeah, just really clear. The charts are good. There's nothing I'm in doubt of. I just there are a lot of sizes. I forget actually how many sizes, but a lot of sizes. I'll add that when I finish it or when I show you this again. But that means that there's quite a lot of numbers. It reminds me a little of when I knitted the Snow Crocus by Midori Hirosa. It's not that many pages, but there's so many numbers. You have to really sort of look for your number. And this kind of bracket, this kind of bracket. So it's very detailed and very clear. It has some short rows in the back, and then you're just pretty much cruising in the round. So I've decided to I'm using stash yarn basically, which is very gratifying. So here I'm um, also fulfilling two aims from this year for this year, using yarn from my stash and knitting designs by designers that I haven't tried before. And let me show you. My main color is this Pure Alana by Gepardgarn, which is a pure black, very black. Hence obsidian. Actually, her obsidian is based on a yarn that's actually gray, dark gray, and not black. But I thought it was black the first time I saw it. I loved the photo, and then I couldn't sort of unsee that black, and I really knew that I wanted to use this because I had it sitting in my stash. And then the light gray that I'm using right now is also from Pure Alana, and this is leftover from my Eurus slipover. And then the next color that I'm going to be changing to, oh yeah, maybe I should just mention, I wanted to do it's not, I don't know, what's the difference between a fade and a gradient? I'm not sure, but I wanted to make one of those. And the next color is going to be this sort of grayish pink, very pale, dusty grayish pink. And then after that, I'm not sure because these are the three. And then I had one more. That was the one I began with, this sort of off white. This is how I began this gradient, or how I've begun. And then I'm unsure about the next color. I had actually decided on this one from Knitting for Olive. It's merino and it's thinner, so I will be holding it double if I decide to use it. But I think that the jump, the gradient, if you will, may be a little too dramatic. These two are so similar, you can barely tell them apart. And suddenly this one comes in. Is it too dark? I wonder. I'm using a silk mohair, by the way. This is the silk mohair, the Dusty Moose. And I'm using a silk mohair. I'll be using a silk mohair to go with that. Just silk mohairs I hadn't stashed. Here I'm using, I actually started out the first two rows using a light gray silk mohair from Knitting for Olive. It was too light gray, I found. So I changed to Tilia Silver Gray from Filcolana. Also used that brand for the first bit. And I'm only using the silk mohair in the contrast color. No need to make it warmer. And the reason why I'm using the silk mohair is that I thought it would enable the fade better, but I'm not sure it has much of an effect, to be honest. It remains to be seen when I'm a little further, but I think I could have left it out. But now I've started, and that's all right. But maybe you can help me out here. I'll leave aside the silk mohairs. I'm wondering if this mousse color is a little too big of a jump, considering that it's a fade. I can tell you that the last two colors are probably going to be these two. Um, Actually, looking at on the screen, it's not too bad. But I was thinking of using this instead, Panilla from Filcolana, which is the same as these last two. But now that I see it on screen, maybe this is actually too light. Then the fade from the jump from this to that is going to be too big. Not sure. Oh my God. This is one of those things that I've been, I've been taking a lot of those pictures. I've been laying the colors out, and then I've been changing it to black and white to tell which one was the darkest, so I can end with the darkest. And I think actually I reversed the blue or the gray and the brown towards the end. Let's see. What I did was I counted the number of colorwork rows, or added the two charts. There's two charts first the yoke bit and then the rest, and I divided that number of rows by the number of colors I wanted to use. So it's probably about 6 colors. And then I'm pretty much going to make that number of rows using each color, except for a bit here in the middle where I'm going to adjust it a little because that motif is a little bigger. It's going to look weird if I change it sort of 1/3 through. So I want it to be symmetrical, if that makes sense. Um, but by the way, I had this one is left over from the Abba sweater where I used this grayish, dusty pink along with a charcoal gray. And I'm finding, like the Helix and the Felix, I'm finding that the Pure Lana is just excellent for color work. I don't know if you can tell, but it's just sort of takes care of itself. I don't have to do a whole lot to sort of pull the floats or to make sure that I don't cinch it in. It's I don't know. It sort of takes care of itself. So this is not a very springy sweater, I have to say. It's going to be warm. I've worn the Abba sweater in the winter here when it was really really cold, but that one is double throughout. But this one's going to pretty much be double also, except for no mohair with the black. But it's going to be warm. But um, I think I'm going to appreciate it come autumn. And if I knit using black during the winter, it's going to, only going to be a few hours I can knit during the day because it's simply too dark. So it's actually perfect right now when there's more light. Oh, also, the stitch gauge, I believe, is 21 stitches, or is it 22? Yeah, it's 22, I think. So almost the same as the Lyra, but definitely very different kind of fabric, of course, because it's a different yarn. But a DK weight, and the suggested needle size is 3.75 millimeter, and I had to size up to 4.5. I first tried a 4 millimeter, and then that didn't meet gauge, so I sized up to 4.5, US 7. I also just want to say that I didn't realize before I was into the knitting. I like, where's the ribbing? And then I read, and oh, you add the ribbing afterwards, the neckband, because there's an option of making a turtleneck. I'm not going to do that because I think I want it simple and low on my neck. And also, I think Pure Lana is probably going to be a little itchy on my neck. So I'm going to make the short neckband. There's also two options for the body and two options for the sleeves. You can make uh, balloon sleeves or relatively exaggerated balloon sleeves. I forget what the right phrase is, but you can make more or less exaggerated balloon sleeves. And I think I'm going to go for the relatively exaggerated balloon sleeves because it was the photo of her walking with that balloon sleeve with the Irish castle in the background that first drew me in. I think it looks really beautiful. And I think she's also wearing the A-line body, and you can also make it just a straight body. I think I'm going to make it like hers with the A-line as well. And I believe she's wearing a size 4 in those photos, even though her measurements and height is almost exactly like me. But I think I hope I'm going to reach the size that I've started with. At least I've cast on for the size 3. Let's see if that's where I end. I'm never quite sure. I'm really enjoying this. I love it so much, and I think it's going to be yeah, a really beautiful sweater. Considering that I really like simple knits, it's kind of like I love the neutrals, but I knit color work, and I also like solid color sweaters that are easy to throw on. But I just find color work so gratifying. And what I really enjoy about this one, apropos the low yoke on the Foxthoughts, it's that it doesn't stop up here. It takes up almost the whole sweater, and I think that's just interesting and beautiful. And it makes me think that if I make for other color work, I would be tempted to also sometimes continue it further down. I just think it looks really beautiful without it being rows. It's like it's long stems of flowers or something without looking cutesy or folksy or anything like that. It's just yeah, I really appreciate this pattern. And it's funny because coincidentally, I've been watching a series or show on BritBox. We've just gotten a new TV package, and I didn't know it until we'd already started it. It has this BritBox channel, which was just such a bonus for me because I love watching lots of British series, for instance, crime series. So I started out with case histories with Jackson Brody, played by Jason Isaacs. Gotta love Jason Isaacs. Went through that. That takes place in Edinburgh. And then I went on to watching this series called Shetland, and it has so many seasons. I'm really happy. And it's this perfect blend of something moody, and there's the quite bare landscape and the waves and the Scottish accent and the quietness, I'm tempted to say, with the grittiness, the moodiness. It's just a perfect companion to knitting on this. And it reminds me a little of the photo that where she's wearing this in, minus the castle, I have to say. But the rough landscapes, the promise of wind or rain. It's just, yeah. And I often find myself, when it becomes increasingly hot here, that I try to balance things with, for instance, more wintry knit, or a program that's a little moodier, a little darker. So that's it in terms of my works in progress. So I just wanted to update you on those. And in terms of knitting plans moving forward, I don't have any summer knitting plans as yet. But I'm open. I have a few ideas, but definitely no plans that are set in stone. And I know that I'm going to be knitting on something else in a couple of weeks, but something that I won't be able to share until probably the autumn. So that's going to take up some of my time. I will, of course, share summer knitting plans if and when I get to them. Yeah, it's been lovely catching up with you. For those of you who are here only for the knitting, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I hope you're knitting on something that sparks joy in your life. And I hope you will be able to find spring or autumn despite the flowers being cut. Sometimes the cycle of nature, the relentless cycle of nature, is positive. And just to add a few life details, yeah, we bought this little summer house or holiday house last year on an island south of here. And although excuse me, it looks a little like a tiny house, and it has a couple of sheds. It was built in 1947, and it's then been renovated, but there's still quite a lot of stuff that has to be done, and we've been doing that, and that's obviously takes so much time. And there's also a bit of a drive down there, so that has also been demanding some of my attention and some of my time. And I might put in a photo of it so you can see what it looks like. And it's not only the time, but also your brain power, your energy. And every time I hit spring, it's like I want to throw myself into garden projects. So we have a pretty large garden here, and I have to do some weeding, and I have to do some replanting, and lots of that. So I've been doing that as well. Um, while actually listening to a couple of podcasts. One of them is the one I'll mention is called "The Way Out Is In," and it's a Zen Buddhist podcast, which I really enjoy. It's an Englishman called, I think his name is Joe Confino. I forget what the monk's name is, but he's brother something or other. He's a monk in the Buddhist tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh, whose books I read many years ago, and it's such a joy to listen to their sort of Zen philosophy on life. And this monk, he's always close to laughing, even when he talks about his own sort of shortcomings. He's always really, you can hear that he talks with a smile. It's just so joyful. So that's been really lovely. And then I've been reading a few books because I'm in two book clubs, and I have to balance working with my body, working with my hands, using my mind. I have to really balance that, I've found over the years. I haven't read any books I would recommend right now, to be honest. So I wouldn't say it's been disappointing, but nothing worth passing on as recommendations so far. I read the most recent book by Julian Barnes, who I love, but I wasn't super amazed by it. So, but that's fine. I love language. I have to suck up language sometimes. So I've been reading, yeah, him. And then I'm reading right now a book by an Irish author called Colm, not sure how to pronounce his last name, Tobin, um, called House of Names, which is a rendition of a story in Greek mythology about Clytemnestra and Agamemnon and Electra and Orestes. So that's interesting. Even if they're not books I want to recommend, it's still something that quietens my mind when I go to sleep or before I go to sleep. Actually, I would recommend this book. It's been years since I read it, but it's completely appropriate right now. The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim, who is just wonderful. Very April relevant reading in this particular edition is Virago Modern Classic cloth bound edition, and you can just pretty much leave this out on a shelf for decoration. So yeah. I've also been quite busy with teaching yoga. It's not a very lucrative job, I have to say, but it's something that's for me is time consuming because it requires presence, which means that you have to be totally present with the people that you teach. And I want to make sure I have the right music, the right relaxation, the right program of asanas, of course, whether it's yin or vinyasa or hatha yoga. So it takes up much more room or much more space and time in my life than what my salary is evidence of. But it's also very gratifying, even if it's also time consuming and demanding. So there's a lot of stuff going on, good things. It just means that I haven't been able to finish any of the things I've started on. But I've also found out that once you, in Danish, we have this phrase, brænder for, which means a burn for. It basically means to be passionate about something. Once you're passionate about something or you burn for something, there's also the risk of burning out, especially if you overdo it. Or for me, if I overdo it, if I overdo something and throw myself so much into that I ignore everything else, there's a greater risk that I burn out or that I suddenly feel uninspired. So this is also a way of ensuring that I am continually happy about knitting if I don't only knit, when I also do what my mind requires or my body. So I don't know if that makes sense or if you feel the same or if you are exclusively knitters. I imagine that some of you may also be wandering off into your gardens at this time of year, if you're in the northern hemisphere, of course. But I don't know. Either way, I think we all need to find balance, and we do it in different ways. So thank you so much for hanging out with me, also in this little personal addition to the knitting. I really appreciate it, and I'm really happy about having been able to sit down and talk to you. And can I just also say that I'm really appreciative of your comments. Your comments are really what makes it all worthwhile, because then I feel we have this interaction and it makes it feel like I'm not just talking to my phone here, which is nice. The connection is what it's all about, after all, and the creativity. That sort of, when those two can meet, that's bliss. So thank you so much. And I wish you a very joyous spring or autumn wherever you are. Bye.